South Korea, a vibrant democracy and a key player in global economics and geopolitics, faced an extraordinary political crisis in December 2024 when President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law. The decision, which he justified as a necessary response to threats from pro-North Korean elements and legislative gridlock, shocked the nation and the international community. The brief imposition of martial law and its subsequent reversal have raised critical questions about South Korea's democratic resilience, political stability, and the global ramifications of such an unprecedented move. This essay explores the context, implications, and potential lessons from this pivotal moment in South Korean history. South Korea's history with martial law is deeply intertwined with its struggle for democracy. During the latter half of the 20th century, the country endured periods of authoritarian rule under military regimes, notably those led by Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-hwan. Martial law was frequently invoked as a tool for suppressing dissent and consolidating power. The events of May 1980, when martial law was used to justify the brutal suppression of the Gwangju Uprising, remain etched in the national consciousness as a stark reminder of the dangers of authoritarian overreach. Since transitioning to a fully democratic system in the late 1980s, South Korea has prided itself on the robustness of its democratic institutions. The declaration of martial law in 2024, therefore, evoked fears of regression and authoritarian backsliding. The immediate backdrop to the crisis was a prolonged political stalemate between President Yoon's conservative administration and the opposition-controlled parliament. Key legislative initiatives, including the national defense budget and measures to counter North Korea's increasing provocations, had stalled. Compounding this were allegations of corruption within the government and widespread public dissatisfaction with economic stagnation and rising inequality. President Yoon's administration also faced mounting pressure over its handling of inter-Korean relations. Despite his hardline stance on North Korea, critics argued that his policies had failed to deter Pyongyang's belligerence and had alienated South Korea's traditional allies. The president's declaration of martial law was seen by many as a desperate attempt to assert control and bypass the legislative gridlock. On December 3, 2024, President Yoon announced the imposition of martial law, citing intelligence reports of imminent threats from pro-North Korean groups. The declaration granted the military sweeping powers, including authority over civilian governance, media censorship, and the suspension of certain civil liberties. Troops were deployed to key locations in Seoul, including the National Assembly, ostensibly to maintain order and secure government institutions. The announcement sparked immediate and widespread protests. Citizens took to the streets in massive numbers, denouncing the move as unconstitutional and reminiscent of South Korea's authoritarian past. University students, labor unions, and civil society groups spearheaded demonstrations, demanding the immediate revocation of martial law and the president's resignation. The international community reacted with alarm. South Korea's closest allies, including the United States, Japan, and the European Union, issued statements urging the Yoon administration to respect democratic principles and resolve the crisis through dialogue. Financial markets responded negatively, with South Korean stocks experiencing sharp declines amid uncertainty over the country's political stability. Under immense domestic and international pressure, the National Assembly convened an emergency session to address the crisis. In a rare show of unity, lawmakers from across the political spectrum voted unanimously to overturn the martial law declaration. This decisive legislative action, combined with the relentless protests, forced President Yoon to lift martial law on December 5, 2024. The episode severely damaged President Yoon's political standing. calls for his resignation intensified, and his approval ratings plummeted to record lows. Analysts predicted that the incident would dominate South Korea's political landscape in the coming months, with potential implications for the next presidential election. The reversal of martial law also raised significant legal and constitutional questions. Critics argued that the president's actions violated constitutional safeguards designed to prevent the abuse of executive power. Calls for impeachment and judicial review of the declaration's legality gained traction, underscoring the need for institutional reforms to prevent future abuses. The crisis highlighted both the strengths and vulnerabilities of South Korea's democracy. On one hand, the swift and unified response of the National Assembly, combined with the vibrant civic activism of the public, demonstrated the resilience of democratic norms and institutions. On the other hand, the ease with which martial law was declared underscored potential weaknesses in the constitutional framework. The incident also reignited debates about the role of the military in South Korea's governance. While the military's conduct during the crisis was largely professional and restrained, its involvement in civilian affairs raised concerns about the potential for future politicization. The crisis had significant geopolitical ramifications. It strained South Korea's relations with its allies, particularly the United States, which viewed the declaration of martial law as a troubling deviation from democratic norms. North Korea, meanwhile, seized the opportunity to criticize Seoul, accusing the Yoon administration of hypocrisy and authoritarianism. One of the key lessons from the crisis is the need to strengthen institutional safeguards against the misuse of executive power. This could include constitutional amendments to limit the president's authority to declare martial law and enhance parliamentary oversight. The political deadlock that preceded the crisis underscores the importance of fostering dialogue and compromise between opposing factions. Mechanisms for conflict resolution and bipartisan cooperation must be prioritized to prevent similar crises in the future. The public's strong reaction to the declaration of martial law underscores the importance of civic education in sustaining democracy. Efforts to educate citizens about their rights and the principles of democratic governance can empower them to hold leaders accountable. The 2024 martial law crisis in South Korea was a sobering reminder of the fragility of democracy, even in nations with a strong democratic tradition. While the swift reversal of martial law and the resilience of civil society were commendable, the episode exposed critical vulnerabilities that must be addressed to safeguard the country's democratic future. As South Korea navigates the aftermath of this crisis, it stands at a crossroads with an opportunity to emerge stronger and more united if the lessons of this turbulent period are heeded.